What is up, everybody? I'm No Lex Given here with your afternoon snap, and today we are taking a look at the finals of this week's Community Gaming Latin America tournament, and it's a pretty spicy one. We've got Living Tribunal on both decks here. Slightly different takes. I'll break down both of these decks as well as all of the other decks in the top four after we look at the finals. But we've got Kamiz on Black Knight Hela with Living Tribunal, though it doesn't quite go as big as some Living Tribunal decks do. Instead, that's actually the Zabu Ravona deck that Wilson is playing. That's going to include a bunch of different ongoing effects and Iron Lad to copy those sweet abilities. So, full disclosure, I do know who wins in this finals match here, but I haven't watched it. So I'm going to be watching it live, giving my live reactions here for you guys, but I do know who is going to come out on top. This was played on Tuesday, so it was played on the previous patch, and that's part of the reason for Living Tribunal being in both decks is kind of a way to combat Professor X, though interestingly, no nerfed cards, at least that are immediately springing to mind in either deck here. Yeah, I don't believe either of these decks are playing with nerfed cards. Now, we saw Wilson discard their Iron Lad on the first turn, and Kamiz discarded the Jubilee. So we'll see how both of these players are able to get on, but Sokovia is a pretty good location if your plan is to Hela in the end game, and Wilson plays his Cosmo, which is then going to mean we don't get too much out of, oh, this is a really interesting, okay, I just got what he was doing there with his hand. So he could play Blade, but then he will draw a card from the Abbey, and then he won't discard the Infinite. So that was a really tricky interaction there. Kamiz decides that discarding the Infinite is more important than drawing that card. Meanwhile, Wilson plays Jubilee into Ravona, so Wilson is actually the Abbey winner here. So now Kamiz is just trying to figure out where to set up this Lockjaw, but this is looking like a pretty big Hela, and I think this is going to be an early cube lead here from Cosmo, though Kamiz, rather. Magic will make this game a little bit longer, and that is going to be an interesting thing to contend with. I do think you just throw down the Hela here right now on turn 6, despite the fact that it kind of gives it away. It's so good with your curve. I don't know, maybe that's wrong. Maybe you should hang on to Hela here, get the surprise factor, and maybe get more cubes, because now you can only really hope to grab 2 cubes out of this. Unless something crazy happens with Onslaught, Iron Man, and Living Tribunal from Wilson, this does look like it's going to be a 2-cube victory here from Kamiz. He'll be able to play Giganto and then Black Knight away the... actually, yeah, this is a better play. I like this. Yeah, just discard Giganto to Dracula. You're already winning in Sokovia with your Infinite. I like hanging on to Giganto here and just letting all of that energy go to waste after all. We'll have to see. I have to imagine Wilson is going to retreat here because they can't play both Iron Man and Living Tribunal this turn, even with Ravona and Zabu making some cost cheaper. They could potentially, like, they've already discarded Iron Lad. There's maybe a universe where Miss Marvel in the center plus Iron Man. Can you play that? Yeah, that's 3 + 4. So that would be a lot of power on the final turn. That probably wins in Limbo, but that's not going to be enough to win either of those 2 side locations. And you probably have to be respecting that. Infinite Lane, you've already lost Infinite Lane. And then the Abbey with Dracula and Lockjaw on that location, I think you have to just respect that if you're Wilson. But let's see what Wilson goes for. Are they going to stay in it and try to get back these 4 cubes? They are, so that's got to be Iron Man, Mrs. Marvel in the center, or Iron Man, Miss Marvel. Oh, it's Mystique for Onslaught, and then maybe Miss Marvel? That is interesting. So actually giving up the center with a bunch of power. Whoa! Okay, so Onslaught, I didn't even see that coming. Obviously, neither did Kamiz, thinking that over 20 power in every location is going to be enough, but that's Mystique copying Onslaught, an interaction that I didn't even think about with the deck, didn't even look at the list closely enough to even notice that Mystique up in the top corner there. So Mystique copying Onslaught is just a huge way. They're like multiplicative on top of each other, and that is pretty crazy. So another awkward sequence here with the Black Knight. I just started playing a little bit of Black Knight myself, and there can definitely be some awkward orders that you can draw your cards in, though this Lady Sif will definitely clear up some of this order. You'd love to play Black Knight plus Blade this turn, but now you can play Lady Sif and you'll probably be able to discard the Infinite. What's location number 3? That's going to be, sorry, they're testing my location knowledge here, but that's Mojo World, just in a different language. I don't quite think it's Spanish. The quality's a little bad on this too, so apologies for that, but it's not just your eyes. This is in a different language here. So Infinite is going to turn into an Ebony Blade, and then Mojo World is going to turn into Limbo. That is a more recognizable location. It's Limbo in every language, looks like. Ebony Blade will get dropped into Limbo, and then Black Cat will also get dropped here, and then I imagine we're setting up for like Lockjaw plus Blade, and we're going to try to dig for Hela, unless we draw it off the top here. Living Tribunal, yeah, this seems good. Just Lockjaw, discard Blade, hope to flip Hela. And this is still a pretty reasonable place for Kamiz or Komiz. I should have asked how they pronounce their name, but we'll see what Wilson has, because they really surprised me in the last game with a bunch of points. Limbo means that they are already set up to do some pretty fantastic stuff here. They could move Iron Man plus the monster over into New York, but Mrs. Marvel's kind of a tricky one because you want to put Onslaught in your Iron Man lane, which means you might just want to keep Monster in the center or potentially move it over to New York. But we're going to see some shuffling around here for Komiz to clear up this Lockjaw location, give them some more room to play with. Jubilee is going to go into the Monster Island this turn, and we see 2 new drops from Wilson this turn. We do fetch the Hela off the Jubilee, so that's going to bring back Black Cat, Living Tribunal, and the Infinite before Hela, or before Jubilee rather, dips out into Dracula. Mystique will copy Iron Man. It's a pretty good Mystique as well. And then what do we have here? Like a Zabu or a Ravona to finish off. Oh, a Crystal. A Crystal to draw one more card off the top of the deck. Now, despite both players having 7 energy this turn, this death is going to be stuck in hand, but a Blade to discard Jubilee will mean that Dracula gets to absorb that power from death. So, pretty good sequencing, I think, working out here. Blade could have discarded the Infinite on turn 1, but instead we saw some really good reservations there from Komiz, hanging on to it, discarding it with Lady Sif, getting a little bit lucky potentially in the order there, but now being able to discard Jubilee to Blade, Death to Dracula. And I feel like Komiz is going to take this one at the very least, currently winning in all 3 locations, adding meaningful power to all locations as well. Well, not adding power to New York, but Wilson is probably also not adding power to New York this turn, other than with an Onslaught center potentially, which is going to be a little bit more power, but I don't think it should be enough power to do it. So again, we see Wilson in the tank trying to figure out what they're going to do. And last time I thought I had it. I thought it was just a retreat from Wilson. There are some plays that you could maybe come up with the deck, but this time it is just going to be a retreat. I was trying to think like Iron Lad copying Onslaught could potentially open up some other things, but it's not going to open up enough here. So we're going to move on to the third one with the players at 6 cubes to 8. Both players have gotten to do their thing a little bit here in the finals, so you can't feel too bad about that. Lady Sif to discard the Infinite with Lockjaw as well. We did see some kind of indicator there that maybe the plan is to throw away some things into the Lockjaw. I wasn't sure if that was the case, but doesn't look like that's what we're going to go for. We've got a bunch of big cards in hand. you'd like to maybe Jubilee or Lockjaw into your big cards, but it's not bad to have multiple big cards in this exact spot, because now Lady Sif is less likely to discard Hela. Magic is going to turn Nova Roma into Limbo, and then we also have Atlantis and Wakanda. I don't think either of those are going to be particularly relevant locations. Now we can use Blade on Death. That's pretty interesting. Oh, yeah. No, this is great sequencing. Lady Sif on Death, and then Blade will discard Giganto, though Lockjaw can only throw away one card per turn, so we're just going to see Lady Sif take the Death here, and that will guarantee that we're not discarding Hela. So this is actually pretty good sequencing, though we see a snap from Wilson. So Wilson could just have the full combo. When you have Magicked, if you can go Iron Man into Onslaught into Living Tribunal, it's just a very, very tough thing to beat. We might also see like a Cosmo into Lockjaw to disrupt that a little bit. No, it's going to be a Zabu and a Ravonna. Well, I guess you snap in that scenario too. That's going to really allow you to just play some really powerful stuff throughout the end here. And we're also going to see that Komiz is going to hang on to the Blade again. This turn, just discarding Black Cat. And then next turn, I think we'll see like Jubilee or Dracula plus Blade to discard Giganto, and then playing Hela on the final turn of the game. The Infinite will be stuck in the hand for Komiz, but getting to drop a big Ebony Blade plus getting to reanimate 3 things with Hela seems like a reasonable line to be taken here. But Ravonna plus Zabu is going to mean that Wilson just has so many options going into these final turns. We see Mrs. Marvel or Miss Marvel here. Apologies, no ring just yet. And then, yeah, we get to do a pretty nice curve. Like I said, Jubilee basically hoping to hit, well, I guess it's just hoping to hit Dracula, right? Or the Blade can hit Dracula. Oh, okay, so there is an interesting sequencing thing here that I almost missed. You don't want to play Blade first into Lockjaw, because then Jubilee could re-grab the Blade, and if that happens, then Jubilee would go find the Blade again, and or Lockjaw could find the Blade. So Komiz is just trying to avoid discarding the Hela to a second Blade activation, which is pretty smart and definitely shows how much Komiz is familiar with playing this deck. There's a lot of ins and outs to the new discard things, and we find Lady Sif, which does hit the Infinite. Okay, I thought Infinite was staying in hand, but no, we are doing a full discard party on this one. We're going to see Iron Man plus Mystique into Wakanda. So that location is getting a bunch of power in it potentially, but we're also going to see a bunch of potential power here from Komiz, who just has to dodge Cosmo. There's some risk right now. If Wilson can predict which location Hela is going to go into, Wilson can drop a Cosmo and really, really mess with this. And if I'm Komiz, I like, because I would think that Cosmo's going to go center. Okay, Cosmo's not even going to show up at all. It's just Living Tribunal into an Iron Man Mystique location, which is 26 power in every single location here. But I don't think that's going to do it. Death, Black Cat, Giganto, and then Infinite to go over the top. No Iron Man Mystique, but 32 power to 26 power in both locations. That was a really, really fun one. Both players getting to Living Tribunal. That's the fun of this matchup. We're both going to play Living Tribunal, so who can full combo better? And I would typically have it on the Iron Man Mystique. If you're going to be on one side of a Living Tribunal matchup, I would think that Iron Man Mystique is more often than not going to take it. Nidavellir might allow them to take it, but with that previous game, Komiz was just able to put together the full combo there, which was more or less unstoppable. Monster Island location number 2. Hela in the hand. Lady Sif could be a little bit risky. It's a 66% chance currently to not mess you up, but there's always that 1 in 3 where you discard your Hela and just feel terrible. Now we've got Wakandan Embassy. I don't know if we've seen Komiz snap yet, so that's kind of interesting. Definitely not snapping now with the chance to discard Hela, but let's see 1 in 3. What goes down to Lady Sif? Okay, Giganto bites the dust. Blade could discard Jubilee. Yeah, I think you just throw Jubilee into Nidavellir here. Nidavellir is going to be a very tough location to win, though, when Iron Man comes in. Looks like it's Miss Marvel for now, though. So that is still beatable. I wonder if we're looking at now Iron Man. Oh yeah, it's not even, oh well, that's right, Ravona's here. So we could have seen an Iron Man this turn. I guess it's just Dracula here. Dracula into Nidavellir, and we're putting all the points into Nidavellir and hoping to draw that Living Tribunal, or hoping to get that Living Tribunal into play in one way or another. No, it looks like Dracula's going to go down into Limbo. Wilson with the Cosmo could still be a really scary play down the line as we see Mystique copy Miss Marvel. But this is a really good setup here from Combs. I have to believe we see a snap. That was a snap from Wilson. So I wouldn't count them out just yet either, but Combs has already pressed the end turn button. We're in it for at least 2 cubes. Onslaught is going to put 10 more power into that center location. And I'm curious, with only one more play from Wilson, what they are going to come up with. What's awkward here is that priority, yeah, you don't have enough to do everything. So you have to hang on to the Black Knight, but you get to discard Death, and then you get to reanimate everything with Hela. You'll hang on to Black Knight, but that should be good enough. That should be good enough here. Oh, they wanted to hang on to the Dracula, or the Death for Dracula. I don't think there's anything you can do about that. You just got to play with what you're given here. And I would put my money on Combs, but Wilson has surprised me before in a similar position. But Wilson only gets to play one card here, even with Ravona. They could play Jubilee? No, it's Cosmo. Cosmo to stop the Hela. I was going to say that Wilson has priority. I think I did briefly mention priority being super important here. That means that Hela is going to flip over and do nothing. It's going to be 13 power, but that 13 power is not going to be enough to take the Monster Island, which is the closest location for Combs here. And now, all of a sudden, well, I guess this is still pretty close. We're still within 2 cubes of the 2 competitors here. 2 cubes left for Combs, 4 cubes left for Wilson. This really could go either way. I know which way it goes. Which way do you think it's going to go? I guess leave your predictions down below in the chat. Maybe should have had you do that at the start of the video. But yeah, now we are in it here. We are in one of the final battles, and we've got Ego. Okay, well, I had no idea this was going to happen either. Like I said, I know who wins, but it turns out we win. We're getting an Ego game in the finals of a cash tournament, mind you. These players are playing for probably like $100 or something is the difference between first and second. I believe that the total cash pool for the tournament is $250. And I'll leave a link in the video description if you are interested in joining in any community gaming Latin American tournaments in the future. That is not good. A Ebony Blade that discards your Jubilee is pretty terrible. At least they got the Ebony Blade from the Black Knight. But yeah, not super great, and it's going to be Lockjaw this turn, all into Sewer System. Can't even play the Dracula. Hela could maybe reanimate Jubilee, but this is not looking good. And Wilson's Ego puts Miss Marvel in the center, and I bet they're going to perfectly order their things so that Miss Marvel doesn't get messed up here. Oh wow, what a way for the finals to land here. That is absolutely incredible and devastating. Magic, Mystique. Okay, so they'll lose it in the Baxter building. Wait, is that enough? No, it's still not enough. Even with Miss Marvel's ability getting canceled out in Baxter building, Wilson is still going to take it. An incredible finals, an incredible sportsmanship there by Combs. But that'll be it. Wilson wins with Living Tribunal. So first up, we've got Wilson with Zabu Ravona Tribunal. this is a pretty interesting list. So nobody was really playing Darkhawk anymore. Blob has really scared all the Darkhawk players away, but Zabu's still really good. And Ravona's kind of like a new Zabu. It's got a little bit more power now that it's a 2-cost card, and it's got the potential to make cheaper some already really powerful cards in the game. Iron Man and Mystique and Jubilee are all pretty respectable cards in their own right, and of course Miss Marvel is absolutely fantastic. Getting that to be a little bit cheaper from Zabu is just unfair. 15 power for just 3 energy, and we saw more often than not it was way more than 15 power, because you're either doubling it with Onslaught or you're doubling some portion of that power with Iron Man or copying it with Mystique. So really great deck. Now, I did bring this up at the start of the video as well. I believe that a lot of the players expressed that Living Tribunal was an interesting card for them because Professor X was just very, very present on Tuesday when this was all played. Now, Professor X still seeing a little bit of play now that it's a 5/1, and Ravona can help cheat it out, as well as Mr. Negative, but definitely it's going to be a little bit less ubiquitous. So how far all of these Living Tribunal decks, because there's three Living Tribunal decks in the top 4. We didn't get to the other ones yet. I don't think I'm going to show the 3rd place match, but I will leave a link in the video description as well to watch the 3rd place match, because one of the competitors of that was streaming it on Twitch. So you can watch their VOD and find the 3rd place match as well as their entire tournament run. Most of this deck is just about putting out power, right? It's almost all just about going over the top with crazy power. We see Iron Man Onslaught Living Tribunal combo, and there's really only one way to get that combo out, and that's with magic, which magic is kind of an interesting one, especially in a Thanos meta, which this was very heavily Thanos meta when this was played. I will say there is one other way to get the full combo out. I'll talk about that again in a second. But the most common way is going to be magic into Iron Man Onslaught Living Tribunal, that kind of a curve. Though the Iron Lad and the Jubilee also help towards the consistency. If you're able to use either of those to find one of those 6-cost cards, then you can just cast the other one normally. Altogether, a really great deck here from Wilson, and Cosmo being the only, that's what I was also going to say, Cosmo is like the only interaction in the deck, really, but that interaction was able to go a really, really long way in the finals to defeat Hela. Wilson also shared with me some pictures from fun moments that they played in the tournament. These first 2 images are fun because the games were so close, winning by just 1 point in these Living Tribunal mirrors, and then this pick was just crazy numbers. So this was like the full combo, getting to go all the way off there. So yeah, just some really fun moments can be had with this deck, and I think it's definitely still strong. Like I said, nothing in this list hit nerfs recently in the OTA, so definitely still a strong contender, even if the meta has changed a little bit. And then for our other finalists, we've got Black Knight Hela with Living Tribunal. Now, interestingly, when you hear Hela Living Tribunal, there is a specific deck that you think of, and it's typically a deck that plays some cards we saw in the other deck, Iron Man and Onslaught. But this is a more sort of traditional deck, I would say. Dracula and Jubilee, those are almost like throwback cards. Lockjaw, haven't really seen that in a while. Of course, both of these decks are actually playing Jubilee, but Lockjaw, Dracula, these are not cards that we've seen, and Black Knight is really good. We saw Black Knight in the finals last week as well, and I don't think that's a mistake. I actually personally just started experimenting a little bit with Black Knight myself. Ebony Blade is pretty good. Can't be destroyed, power can't be reduced. It's just a really powerful card now, and it's definitely worth building around. So that's what we saw Comas do here, and it got him well enough to second place. A 50-50 read going differently on that Hela, or even more than a 50-50. Just the difference of that 1 in 3 hit on the Cosmo to Hela interaction on the second to last game means that you've got some cubes to spare going into Ego and can potentially turn the thing around and win the whole series for yourself. So well fought there by Comas. Didn't quite go their way this time, but still a pretty great effort. Comas said they wouldn't change anything about the list. I asked them that as well. They said they used to play Magneto instead of Living Tribunal, and I think Magneto could still have some applications, especially with all the Miss Marvels running around. So that could be something to consider now, though they were playing Living Tribunal specifically, like I said, because of all the Professor X. This is our third place list from the event, also a Zabu Ravona list. We can look at both of them right now just to compare. This list cuts Cosmo and Crystal for Wave and Sarah. So Sarah just being another card that can make the energy cost of your card even cheaper, and you've got more time to make use of Sarah because of magic. You can do something like magic into Sarah into Onslaught, then everything costs 2 less on the final turn of the game, which can make for some pretty crazy plays. You can play a 3-cost Iron Man plus a 4-cost Living Tribunal on that final turn, so that's just another way to full combo. And then Wave can also reduce the cost of Onslaught and Living Tribunal, so that way you just have various ways that you can curve out and get everything into play with this deck. So it's really leaning heavily on that combo, though so is the other build of the deck. They both load almost as heavily in on the combo, with Wilson going for a little bit more consistency in the form of Crystal, with Cosmo as a very clutch piece of interaction. Shuts down Hela, shuts down Blob, shuts down Arnim Zola. So those are some really important things that you need to be able to take care of. Whereas Rage EX or Rag EX, they are going for more consistent ways to, or more different ways to reduce the costs of your cards. And there's some consistency in that for sure as well. Both players able to put up pretty good results here, winning their final games. And I think that either build of this deck could potentially be good going forward. And then lastly, we do have one Blob Thanos list. Now, notably, this deck obviously was affected a little bit by the recent OTA, with Professor X now being a 1 power card only. It had 3 power when this tournament was played. It's definitely a little bit worse, but I'm still seeing a lot of people play Professor X, and I played this deck a decent amount, not with all of these same card choices, but all of these cards are still powerful cards, and I think that is a really important thing to consider. Professor X, probably a less powerful card now, though it's still going to be just as powerful if you hit it off Iron Lad. And then all of these powerful Legion, Vision, Goliath, Blob, Thanos, well, not Thanos, but Magneto. All of these other cards just allow you to do some really powerful stuff, and that was enough for Android to get 4th place. And Android, I also want to say, recently, I think only 1 or 2 weeks ago, also got 3rd or 4th place in one of these weekly community gaming tournaments, and Android was the player that was streaming the 3rd place final. So if you want to go watch that, support Android, check out their channel. Wilson also has a Twitch channel. I'll leave all of the links to all of these players that were provided to me in the video description below. But for today, that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm No Lux Given. Peace.